Welcome to this new how-to. In this how-to we're going to look at the experimental aircraft and especially how to get the maximum speed, which is, well, above 9 Mach. That's really cool, right? So there are a few things which you need to do, but let's first guide you to how to set up the custom cameras, because the custom cameras are critical in this scenario. So what you need to do is you need to set a custom camera which points into a certain part of the aircraft, and I will now do it with the, I would say, joystick on the top of my joystick. So you need to set up a custom camera which points in the direction of these buttons. Although they show up as beacon lights, they're actually not beacon lights. They're used for getting the, I would say, maximum speed using the jam functionality of the aircraft. So these are critical. So I've put them under the, I would say, custom camera position 4, right? So if I simply press the Alt key and 4, I will go to that position. The next one which you need to set is this one, because are the fuel cells. And the fuel cells are also critical for that engine mode. So I've set this one on the 3, and then of course there's the main button which is hidden on this one. It's scram enabled, right, which enables the scram jets, and that ensures that you can get the maximum speed out of the aircraft. Now you might want to know, okay, hey, how can you, let's say, get into that loop? Well, these buttons are actually pages, right? So the first page, which is the default one, shows simply, let's say, the runway in this case. It shows you the speed, the amount of pressure put on yourself, right, the g-forces, and also the altitude. Then on the second page you can see multiple pumps being enabled by default, right? By default all the pumps are enabled. There's no need to change that, as well as the left engine and right engine valve. These are open. So the left scram engine and right scram engine, you don't need to touch these buttons. And then the most important part, this is how to come to that speed, right? So it shows you that you need to fly 0.9 Mach or climb to 0.9 Mach. That can be reached by flying in a, let's say, 10-degree angle in most cases. Then you will, let's say, do the pull and then roll on your back and then push down the aircraft, and that will, if you're lucky, it will put yourself in a supersonic transition. However, in some scenarios, and probably it also will happen in this video, you will not make it, and then you need to do some other tricks to eventually go into this hypercycle, where you can easily switch on the scram jets, and then you will go, I would say, crazy high and crazy fast. As mentioned already, you need to make sure that you need to that the fuel tanks are full, right? So you can do that by easily selecting the weight option and then simply moving this slider to 100. What you will see now happening is that all the boxes are green, and that's critical because else you won't survive long. So let's go airborne, right? So let's push the throttle forward. Let's remove the parking brakes. Let's activate the afterburner. The afterburner is critical, right? So by default there's no button assigned to it. So make sure that if you want to fly this aircraft, that you set up the afterburner, because else it will be a nightmare. So I'm gonna move to the first page again, because that makes it easier for me. And we're gonna pitch to an angle of 10% and then see when we hit the 0.9 max. Once you hit that 0.9%, you can, let's say, climb a little bit further to 20 degrees. And that can be recognized here, right? So we're now climbing 10%. So we slowly go to 20% while keeping an eye on this speed. Because this speed, the max speed, needs to remain on 0.9 Mach. So we're first going to climb. And we're going to climb pretty high, above 35k. That's what I recommend you to do. You can see that the speed is pretty stable. So here we go. Almost above 20. And you can see that the speed is pretty stable, right? So that's good. So while looking at this, right, you can go to this page and look at the details. So you can see that we need to do a roll and then do an unroll, and which puts the aircraft in the normal position again, and then we'll simply continue our flight. So we're gonna move to the center again. So we're at 0.9. You can see that we're going a little bit, I would say, above the 20%. It's really, let's say, recommended to not go above the 20%, because then you will see that the aircraft will start to decrease a bit. It's in this, let's say, case not a real issue. So now we're gonna do the roll, and with the roll it simply means that you need to go fly on, I'd say, in a different position, right? So let me show you by going to the outside and then show you the correct view. And simply what we're gonna do is move the aircraft in this position. So once you're in this position, you need to turn back the aircraft. And you do that by pulling the stick. That will result in that the G-forces to increase massively. And that's shown here. But push it to, let's say, 20 degrees. And then keep an eye on the speed, because the speed will increase, which is not an issue. Also keep an eye on the altitude. And the reason why you need to do that, because else you will crash into the ground. And since you're going, I would say, crazy high at some point, you will need to keep an eye on it, because you are closer to the ground than you think in a few seconds. So now I'm gonna do the unroll, which simply means I'm gonna move the position back to normal flight, and then I'll push the stick back. You will see that G-forces are becoming massively in the danger zone. So push it back to roughly 10-20 degrees initially. And keep an eye on that Mach counter. If you're lucky the first time, it will directly continue to increase. If you're unlucky, it will stop increasing, and actually it will start to decrease. If that happens, then I will show you a trick if it also happens to me. If it doesn't happen to me, then there's a small other trick with simply climbing a bit and then pulling or pushing the aircraft down and then making the other cycle up, right? So you can, now it starts to decrease. So what I will do now is I will push it forward. This is normal, right? This is simply the blackout. So don't be worried. Or be worried if it happens, but it shouldn't. And then we can simply decrease altitude again, which will result in that of course the speed, but also the Mach to increase. And then at roughly, let's say 20k, which is shown here, I will start pulling back, and then hopefully it will take that speed back with us. So you can see that the speed now comes with us, right? So be careful with pushing the G-force too high, because I do think it's related with that. So currently we're climbing, but you can see that in this case the Mach speed will continue to increase. It goes massively hard, and that's why I mentioned to you, hey, you need to keep an eye on these buttons, because now we're gonna move these buttons to this position. Again, I'm not sure if this is the correct position, so let's find out. Then I'm gonna go to the fuel cells, and then I'm gonna go and switch on the engines. This will take some time before they're kicking in, so don't worry. It will take some time before they kick in, and then you can continue. If for some reason I'd say it doesn't work, then check the buttons over here, because as mentioned, I think they need to be in this position. Here you hear them kick in. And keep an eye on this panel, right? Because in this panel you will be able to figure out, okay, did they already start it? Yes or no? Because if these ones are off and this one goes on, then you're in a good position. In this case, you can see that we're currently at 3.6, but they didn't kick in yet. So let's validate everything again. So the fuel cells are on. That's good. Now it works. So we did some tricks, but now you can see that 3 and 4 are enumerated or enabled. You can also see that the aircraft starts, say, going forward like crazy, and you can see that engine 1 and 2 will shut down, right? So now we're flying on the fuel cells, and now we're, I would say, almost in orbit, right? You can climb crazy high if you want. And this is how you can use it. You can see that the normal speedometer will will not show a value anymore, but keep an eye on this. Keep an eye on the max. You can see that it goes really fast. So important things, right? Important repetition of how the buttons need to be. So it's now a little bit hard to see, but keep an eye on the beacon lights. Although they're called beacon lights, they're actually not the beacon lights. Keep an eye on this one, on the fuel cell, and keep an eye on the scram enable button. Once you've enabled it, you will see that you will be in, I would say, a few minutes, you will be on a crazy high speed, especially if you continue to fly at 10 degrees. If you want to push the aircraft to the max, you of course can push back the stick and then, I would say, climb even higher rates. And then eventually you will reach, say, 5,500 knots easily, sometimes even higher, right? I've reached already 5,700 knots. Of course, try to avoid that you're coming into the, I would say, danger zone. So here we are, right? We're still climbing like crazy. You can see that the aircraft is pretty heated, but I'd say it's relatively cool. So once you're at, I would say, 120,000 feet. We're now far too high because we played around with the buttons. But if you play the, I would say, mission, you will also see that 120,000 knots is, I would say, the speed you need to go to. And you can see if you simply fly at 10 degrees, you will hit the 10, the Mach 10, I would say, easily. In this how-to, we looked at the experimental aircraft and how to reach the maximum speed by using the scram enable option, which will use engine 3 and 4. So initially I thought, hey, engine 3 and 4, where are they? Well, those are the scramjet engines, and you can now fly crazy fast and crazy high from one continent to the other continent. Here ends this video. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you've got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.